filled with quick fashion, poor craftsmanship, and flashy, over-the-top cars, one segment stands out: the full-size luxury sedan, or executive luxury sedans as they're sometimes referred to. Think about cars like the S-Class, the BMW 7 Series, and that's about all the options left. So what happened to the others? But before that, let's go back to the mid-2010s. BMW had the G11 7 Series and had the 760li version with a 610 horsepower twin-turbo V12. Audi had just launched the brand new D5 A8 and was one of the most high-tech cars you could buy. Lexus had the 5th generation LS, which has to be one of the most beautiful luxury limousines ever. Lincoln had the incredible Continental, which may have been America's finest luxury limousine. Then you had Cadillac with the iconic CT6 executive sedan, and Mercedes with the all-incredible W222 S-Class, which to me is one of the best modern Mercs made, especially with the different Maybach and AMG versions. And the thing about all of these luxury sedans is the fact that they're all incredibly beautiful. All of these cars either don't exist now or the replacements are, well, questionable. Fast forward to 2026, where the 7 Series has become, well, a straight-up pig. The Audi A8 is probably going to be phased out for an SUV. The Lexus LS has died and might be morphing into a minivan. The Lincoln Continental has been phased out. Cadillac CT6 is dead. And while the only decent all-rounder left is the W223 Mercedes S-Class, which people love to hate on but I quite like, maybe because it's one of the only decent Mercs right now. But before we get into why these luxury sedans are fading away so quickly, what exactly is a luxury executive sedan? Well, traditionally they're, sedans, but tend to have quite long wheelbases, and are focused on a serene experience inside with high-tech amenities and opulence. Let's use the most popular of any executive sedan, the S-Class, as an example. See, the S-Class is Mercedes' flagship saloon. It is just under 5.2 meters long and has a wheelbase of over 3.1 meters. If you get the extended wheelbase version, it's around 0.1 meters longer in length. This gives a large amount of room to the passengers in the back of these cars, which are commonly used as chauffeur-driven vehicles. The interior is coated in top-of-the-line leathers and other luxurious materials, and the engines use either inline 6s or V8s. Very rarely will they use anything smaller. Also, the looks of the cars scream wealth, but not in a sense where it's flashy, but in a more opulent way, with the large silver grille and the long yet elegant looking side profiles really highlighting the wealthy customers these cars target. These cars also symbolize wealth and are regarded as a status symbol, with people like athletes, celebrities, politicians, and high-earning employees and even CEOs using these cars. And for many people, these are one of those assets that scream, "I have made it." Or well, they used to be. So if they held a relative importance, why is it that these are fading away? Well, we all know that the mainstream success of SUVs 20 years ago created the path for many of these sedans to be phased out. Every other car coming out nowadays is an SUV or crossover. This has created dwindling sales of sedans in big markets like Europe and the Americas. This has created pressure on the brands to make sure more and more SUVs are being sold, which then results in way less profit for the similar sized sedans, which in turn meant that brands had to stop selling these models as they did not contribute enough money to the brand's sales. This is exactly what has happened to the luxury limousines. Cars like the Lincoln Continental have been oversold by cars like the Navigator and caused Ford to pull the plug. And then there's the second reason: electric vehicles and tightening emission laws. Not only are SUV sales becoming more and more prevalent, so are the mandates for electric cars. But you may ask, why not just make electric limousines? Well, while that has been done with the likes of the EQS and the i7, they may not have been selling particularly well recently, and for manufacturers it is easier to take an SUV platform and electrify it, because the position of the batteries is normally underneath the car. And in SUVs there tends to be more space for brands to put these batteries. And as more and more emission laws come into play, the harder it gets for manufacturers to justify keeping their large executive sedans with big engines, such is the case with this V12 7 Series and S65 AMG. For cars like the Audi A8, all of these have contributed to its demise. In 2018, when the 4th gen Audi A8 arrived, it was the most technologically advanced limo, having 3 screens on the interior and even some incredible autonomous driving features. But the A8 has not been able to meet sales targets, and Audi has said that in 2028 that 2 models would come to replace the A8, a flagship luxury SUV nicknamed Landjet, and a flagship sedan called Land Yacht. Both were not going to be the founding names, but they were going to be electric cars nonetheless. But reports suggest that this might not be happening anymore because of the lack of sales in the luxury electric car segment. Because of this lack of sales for EVs in this segment, it is getting harder for brands to justify keeping these nameplates running. So brands are abandoning these plans, like Audi, who have now said there's no imminent replacement for the A8, and they can't facelift it either because of the cost to make it at par with the new regulation. So so the A8 is probably going to die by the end of 2026. But this is a decision from a brand type of view that makes sense. In 2025, in the USA, Audi sold just over 1,400 A8s. Compare that to BMW's 8,513 BMW 7 Series. So that leaves us with only the BMW 7 Series and the Mercedes S-Class in the luxury executive sedan segment. Well, there are also the Bentley Flying Spur and the Rolls-Royce Phantom and Ghost, but those are quite a bit more expensive. However, for the sake of the video, we'll include them. But what made these heavy, long and fat cars so incredible? On paper, these cars should not be loved by car people. They were always so much heavier compared to other cars around them in that time. They don't always have the most inspiring engines, they aren't set up to be able to go as fast as they can, or provoke high emotions for the driver. Even though all that is true to a high extent, still car people flock for these cars. Maybe not the newer ones, but take a look at the older executive saloons. There's a huge following for these cars. Cars like the W220 S65, the revolutionary Lexus LS E38 7 Series. I mean, look at this thing. The earlier generations of the Audi S8 with the V12, the W126 S-Class, the Mercedes-Benz 600, and even going later, the W222 S-Class and the incredible looking Jaguar XJ in every single version. And even wild cars like the VW Phaeton and Toyota Century. All these cars delivered on their promise of being incredibly luxurious both as a passenger and as a driver. And then we got some incredibly gnarly versions of these executive sedans, which made for some incredible fun. But there are a few more reasons as to why these cars are fading away. Not necessarily because of the brands, but also because of the customer base. Well, these cars fall under luxurious goods, which are put into a classification called old money. This basically translates to luxury goods which are timeless, not too flashy, focusing on neutrality and often the passing down of wealth. In the world today, while old money has seen a rise in terms of fashion, it has done the opposite in the luxury goods market. As the newer, more young buyers tend to go for cars that are flashier. Think Urus, Bentayga, G-Wagons, or really any of the trending SUVs nowadays, or even large electric vehicles like the Taycan. This has caused quite a big shift in the market, with brands trying to abandon the elegance of an executive sedan and shift to a much flashier SUV. Look at Aston Martin, who used to sell the incredible but highly underrated Rapide, which you could say nearly a decade on was replaced by the DBX. I mean, also look at the 7 Series and the trends it's trying to follow. While high-end luxury sedans aren't completely done for, cars like the M5 and RS7 still sell. However, these cars don't put luxury first. They're focused a lot more on the sport aspect. Think aggressive grills and ride, as well as Alcantara and slightly more drivers-focused interiors. Whereas in the large executive sedans, they prioritize luxury and opulence. And even in the sporty performance trims like the Merc with the S63, they don't shift the luxury aspect. They just add sporty touches, newer bumpers, which are only slightly more aggressive. A higher output engine and slight interior touches which just add to the experience without taking out any of the comfort are what made these cars so special. I think one thing that describes the characteristics of these sports sedans is that they are unapologetic in what they do. They are made to put luxury first, and I guess nowadays, what's happened is the meaning of luxury has changed to the consumer. More flashy show of wealth is more apparent, and more sporty cars and SUVs are the biggest thing making monies from these manufacturers. See, luxury has become more focused on customization and technology rather than craftsmanship and timeless engineering. That's why these cars don't thrive like they once used to, and the only ones left are the ones that took the jump and reinvented what luxury meant. Young buyers see these executive sedans as boring and mundane. So I guess we should go back to the history behind these sedans and look through the different generations of these cars to understand a bit more about them. You see, these cars existed all the way back to even the 40s and the 50s with the Mercedes-Benz 300 Adenauer, the mighty Cadillac Series 62 and Fleetwood, Lincoln Continental and Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. And look at these things, they screamed wealth and power, especially in a time where high-performance cars were mainly for races. These were the cream of the crop of cars at the time. These cars were mainly used by politicians or highly important people. These cars symbolize elite status and government power, and most of the time they were chauffeur-driven. These cars also represented a glimpse of hope to the automotive industry after the Second World War. Owning one of these gems meant you were important and not necessarily that you wanted people to see you're rich. There's a difference. Then came the 60s. This is the time when a strong class structure had already been set and a huge respect came for craftsmanship. This showed in the cars. There was the incredible Mercedes 600 Pullman, the original Jaguar XJ, and the Cadillac DeVille. Following decade, the 70s came, a slightly different view. During this time, I would say, came the end of the high focus on craftsmanship. Instead, more focus came on being reliable and comfortable. During this time, there came a huge shift towards the safety of the occupants, with the notable models being the W116 S-Class, BMW E3, and Audi 100. However, there were many others from brands like Lincoln, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, and Cadillac. This is the time that German players like Audi and BMW would start to take over the market. Then came the 80s, and people wanted their executive sedans to show wealth. Caused by the rise of finance industries and capitalism, wealth ended up becoming something to display. Hence came cars like the W126 S-Class, the E23 7 Series, and the first-gen Lexus LS. Also, during this time, more and more people wanted to drive their executive sedans, so they became better to drive. Then we got some of the greatest cars because engineers were able to do what they wanted to these luxury boats. So we got cars like the W126 560 SEC AMG 6.0 wide body, the Alpina 7 Series, and many more. Some of these cars are selling for crazy value nowadays. Then came the wondrous 90s, often considered the golden age for many segments in the automotive industry, and it was definitely true for the luxury executive sedan. The 90s brought about the perfect balance, bringing a car which showed status, had peak engineering, which was incredibly comfortable in the back, had incredible driving enjoyment. This meant we got cars like the BMW E38 7 Series and the incredible Alpina version. We also got the perfect LS400, a pioneer in engineering and really made the world rethink luxury in cars. And then there was also the W140 S-Class, one of my all-time favorite cars. During this time, each car in their respective segments did what they set out to do. The supercars were quick and emotive, and cars like the S-Class were incredibly luxurious. They didn't try to blend in supercar elements. Well, unless you get the S73, which has the V12 from the Zonda, but with that being said, the car definitely had more sports elements, but it wasn't over the top, and the car was still incredibly comfortable, but just had a screaming V12. Then came the 2000s, which brought a technology race into these boats. During these times, these executive sedans became more of a tool than an emotion-based automobile. These cars needed to be as luxurious and technologically advanced as they could be to be able to get you to the places you need to go to without being eventful. Cars like the W221 S-Class, E65 7 Series, and the D3 Audi A8. They did make huge leaps in technology over this time period, however, but they did lose their soul quite a bit. However, we did have some special edition models with the V12s, but they just weren't the same as they were before. Then came the 2010s, the start of the end for these vehicles. However, we did get some incredible models. Cars like the W222 S-Class remains as one of maybe the best modern luxury limousines, and it even had the V12 S65 and the stunning Maybach versions, even the Pullmans. This is one of the most timeless modern limousines in my opinion. However, this is the time that these cars became more and more for corporate use with companies, which is a trend that still continues to this day. If you go to large financial hubs like London, New York, even large cities like Paris, you see many of these large executive sedans in black with silver wheels driven by people in nice black and white suits. Now into the 2020s, where many of these cars have become overtaken by new flashy SUVs, and mainly only the S-Class, and I forgot to mention earlier, Porsche Panamera and the 7 Series exist at the bottom end, and the Rolls-Royce Ghost and Phantom, alongside the Bentley Flying Spur, are available at the top end. Oh, and also the Maybach S-Class. As times are changing, and we're shifting away from safe designs to move out there to angular designs, both in the interior and exterior, these executive sedans often struggle with that because of the inherent soft nature that these sedans have been built around for decades. Now, yes, many of these cars are disappearing, but they're not completely gone. However, this may be the final countdown for these cars because even the S-Class and the 7 Series have been tanking in sales over the past few years. And if those two go, well, that is kind of the end of this segment. But I guess it's one of those situations where we celebrate what has already happened instead of what could be. While the demise of these sedans is quite the tragedy, we were able to experience some of the finest cars ever made, and that is something to be celebrated.